maybe you could point to one or two of the allegations in the story and say, oh, they're reaching, or I'm not buying that or whatever. But let's face it, right now, it is Dan Snyder faced off against the National Football League. And I guess my second point would be, this is a man, Daniel Snyder, who when he bought the franchise a little over 2 decades ago, he talked about the immense love he had for this franchise, how he loved it and how he became a huge fan and everything about it, the Joe Gibbs, Bobby Beathard, Jack Kent Cook days, the wonderful competitiveness, the how tough a home field. Maybe RFK you could point to one or two of the allegations in the story and say, oh, they're reaching, or I'm not buying that or whatever. But let's face it, run the franchise right now. It is Dan Snyder faced off against the National Football League. The interesting part of the story to me, and I guess my second point would be part of it where this is talking about a man, Daniel Snyder. Guys Cook days, so downtrodden, the wonderful that competitiveness, other how tough a home field. Maybe you could point to one or two of the allegations in the story and say, oh, they're reaching, or I'm not buying that or whatever. Which is what happens anytime the franchise right now. It is Dan Snyder faced off against the interesting part of the story to me. And I guess my second point would be part of it where this is talking about a man, Daniel Snyder. If you love this franchise so much, if you truly want to see greatness with this franchise, stop being the most selfish person in the District of Columbia and in the area right now. Because what you're doing is you're preventing this franchise from healing, moving on, downtrodden, and wonderful that competitiveness. When the other how tough a home field. Maybe you can point to one or two of the allegations in the story and say, oh, they're reaching, or I'm not buying that or whatever. Which is what happens on the franchise right now. It is Dan Snyder faced off against the interesting part of the story to me. And I guess my second was, I guess I would part of it. This is talking about a man, Daniel Snyder.
Don't wear anything purple. Don't even sparks a groundswell that makes it a natural occurrence. Like what happened with Robert Sarver, I think is his name, the former Phoenix Suns owner. They the NBA imposed a significant punishment on him, released some facts, unlike the NFL, which has released no facts about Daniel Snyder dating back to July 1 of 2021, and then nature kind of took its course. I think they're waiting for some moment that causes nature to take its course, and they hope that the laws of that specific nature will apply to Daniel Snyder, and it just becomes a natural outcome that he sells the team. I think that's what they're hoping for.
It's clear right now that something is holding up this process of reckoning for Daniel Snyder. Whether or not he'd be forced to sell the team, one of the other parts of this story, Mike, that I think you noticed, Seth Wickersham was all over ESPN talking about it yesterday, and I think it's fascinating that the NFL almost always gives owners who are building new stadiums a break financially. They allow them maybe to borrow a little bit more money than is allowed under league strictures. But in this particular case, they think maybe that the way to really get to Dan Snyder is to not allow him to go beyond any of the financial strictures that are in place to prevent owners from borrowing too much money and to being hawked too much when they build a stadium. And their hope is that if they do this, that Snyder clearly won't be able to build a stadium. But I think when I was hearing that yesterday, I just thought how hilarious that was. You know why? No entity in the greater Washington area is going to give Daniel Snyder any sort of break, in building a stadium in their municipalities, in their states, in their districts, for a very simple reason. They understand how disastrously flawed he is as the runner of a franchise. So it isn't like, for instance, if the Green Bay Packers suddenly had to build a new stadium tomorrow, if Lambeau Field
somebody decided, after all that money they paid to attorney Beth Wilkinson to investigate the situation for 10 months, to not ask her to provide a written report with written recommendations. Because as 106.7 The Fan initially reported in D.C., and as we confirmed back in February, if she had been asked to reduce her recommendations to writing, one of the recommendations would have been require him to sell the team. Somebody gave him a pass July 2021. So in my mind, something has to change between then, which wasn't all that long ago, and now to get the league in the mood to do something. And there's been reporting that some owners are starting to get there, But until 24 do, you can't go after him. And you have to be ready for him to fight you in every court that he could possibly muster a colorable legal claim. And you've got to be ready for him to pull the pin on his dirt grenade, if he has one. Everything he has about anyone that he can take governmental assistance that others would easily get. So that's what's going to cause me to sell the team. But I don't know where the end game is here. And I don't think the league knows where it is because they don't want to force the end game, because that's when he becomes dangerous. Backed into a corner, lashes out, drops the dirt that he has on others, whether it's real, whether it's imagined, or somewhere in between. Nobody wants to mess with that. And so we're kind of at this weird impasse where the situation continues. And is it sustainable? I don't know. They've managed to sustain it for well over a year.
Mike, you know what I was thinking of yesterday reading this story? I was thinking that, okay, it looks like the NFL just wants to passively let this thing go and does not want to force anything to happen because for whatever reason, if it is, as the ESPN story claims, because they fear Daniel Snyder going nuclear legally and in the public arena, maybe that is it. It kind of reminded me of what happened with the Golden State Warriors and Draymond Green. Even though you and I are probably the last to be fans of the NBA, for no other reason than could we have a life other than football? And me, I kind of like baseball. But so we don't know that much about the NBA. But we do know that TMZ had Draymond Green dropping one of his teammates with an incredibly lead fist of a punch in the middle of practice. Who does that to a teammate? Drops them to the floor with a gigantic punch in the middle of practice. And then
Steve
what
Smith,
did the Warriors do
twice
on Monday of this week?